Greetings and welcome to the channel. My name is Dr. Gyesie, transformational coach here at Inner Mileage, where we help folks overcome their limiting self-beliefs so they can live happy, resonant lives right here, right now. Today we're going to be talking about the truth about spiritual awakening, who awakens, why, and what comes after. The truth about spiritual awakening, who awakens, why, and what comes after. And the setup for this is to ask yourself the question, if when you look around your life, things seem familiar or different. Because if you felt like there are shifts happening in your life, that the things that you once cared about, like money, success, relationships, approval, no longer hold the same weight. It's as if your reality you once knew is starting to unravel. And this has happened to me on many, many dimensions. You look at the world and it suddenly feels different. You don't know why. There's a feeling inside you that says, there's something deeper happening within me. And all of this is happening because you are awakening. Now, I want to be clear that awakening isn't a trend. It's not a buzzword or a mystical fantasy. In fact, it's something real, something that's been documented in ancient texts and in modern psychology as well as neuroscience. And the thing is, awakening isn't comfortable. It isn't. It's not the beautiful, enlightened glow that social media may have you believe, for the most part. True awakening is very disruptive, painful, and deeply transformative. And today, we're going to unpack what awakening really is beyond the clichés, who awakens and why not everyone does, the signs that you are awakening because once you see them, you can't ignore them, the deeper purpose of awakening, why it happens and what it's leading you toward, and finally, what happens after you awaken, because your old life will no longer fit in the same way. And it's important that you recognize that this is your journey, but it's not just yours. It's part of a much, much larger story, one that all humankind has been living for centuries. So let's go into some historical perspectives on what awakening is. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Hindu sacred text, Lord Krishna tells Arjuna, as a person puts on new garments, giving up old ones, the soul similarly accepts new material bodies, giving up the old and useless ones. This is Bhagavad Gita 222. The metaphor describes awakening as the shedding of false identity the moment you recognize that you are not your body, not your mind, and not your past experiences. Similarly, in the Theravadan Buddhist framework, which I subscribe to, awakening, called Bodhi, is a realization that there is no permanent self, also known as anatta. That there is impermanence, everything is impermanent, known as anicca, and life is filled with dissatisfaction, known as suffering or dukkha in the language of the Buddha. The Buddha described enlightenment as the moment one stops to cling to illusions and sees reality as it is, not as you think it is. Also, the great Sufi poet Rumi, who's often quoted, said, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." This suggests that suffering is not a punishment, but a doorway to higher consciousness. Also, Carl Jung described awakening as individuation, the process of integrating the unconscious aspects of yourself into conscious awareness, integrating the unconscious parts of yourself into conscious awareness. And awakening from a Jungian perspective, or Carl Jung's perspective, is the moment you recognize your shadow, your dark sides, the hidden parts of yourself that society has forced you to repress. Now, in neuroscience, they show that awakening-like states are triggered by deep meditation, even psychedelics or near-death experiences. And these are linked to decreased activity in the brain's default mode network, which is responsible for the sense of a separate self, right? So this suggests that awakening is not just a psychological experience, but a neurological shift in consciousness. So who's chosen to awaken? Why do some people awaken and some people remain asleep? Well, society is designed to keep people in a structured, predictable state because the world runs on routine. It runs on productivity and it runs on social norms. And social norms that discourage deep questioning. You just go with the flow. So you realize that there are several catalysts that trigger awakening. And we'll go through 3 or 4 of them. The first is the so-called dark night of the soul. So pain is often the first sign of awakening when you get to this dark nights of the soul. And there's usually loss, betrayal, or illness. And these experiences shake our constructed identities and force us to confront deeper truths. Then there's also transgenerational trauma and genetic factors, right? That show that trauma can be passed down biologically, making some people predisposed to deep existential questioning. Why is this happening? What's the meaning of my life? And there's also the natural temperament of the seeker. Some people are naturally drawn to questioning reality, and it's sort of an archetype of your internal DNA. For example, philosophers, mystics, even artists are drawn to these type of questions, and they are ones who awaken first, you see. And this is a disintegration of the old self to the new self. And then there may be karmic or mystical contracts. Many traditions believe that certain souls incarnate with a predetermined contract to awaken and help others. And this is referenced in Jewish mysticism, it's referenced in Christianity, and certainly referenced in the recognition that awakening from suffering is a non-linear path to being chosen. Let's call it that. So what are some of the signs of awakening? Well, there are several, but from a psychological and emotional perspective, there is the beginning of disillusionment with societal values. There is increased empathy and heightened intuition. Then you also experience synchronicities and deja vu-like experiences. There are also sleep disturbances, sensitivity to foods and environments, and so on. And then ultimately, you may ask yourself, what is the purpose of awakening? What is the real purpose of awakening? The real purpose of awakening is to break illusions, right? See beyond the false constructs. Then there's the evolution of your own consciousness, moving from fear-based to expansive awareness. Then there's also activation of purpose, knowing that awakening is not just for personal liberation, it's for service to humanity, right? And there's many great folks who were not great before awakening became great as a result of the awakening. So what happens after awakening? There's often what's called the ego death, or the void, entering the void, where nothing makes sense anymore. Your old world doesn't make sense. You can't relate to the people you related to before. The things you used to do before just seem very foreign. And you feel like you're in this new no person's land. And you're not sure how to function. In the Christian parlance, this is often referred to as the notion of becoming born again. Because when you become born again, you're metaphorically a baby. And imagine a newly born baby is born and starts to cry because it's in a strange place, doesn't know how to eat, walk, speak, and all these things. It has to learn all these things. And this part of the journey can be very jarring for a lot of people. It can be. But it's a natural part of the evolution until you get to a place of stability and integration. And once you integrate, you begin to learn how to function in daily life without going back to sleep, metaphorically speaking. So you realize that awakening is not about escaping reality, it's about facing it fully awake. And the truth is, once you wake up, there's no going back. You see, once you wake up and you take the proverbial red pill, there's no going back. If this sounds like you, type transform in the comment section. If you're struggling with your awakening or you've awoken, but you're not sure what this means, let's have a conversation. And you're welcome to book a free session on my website, innermileage.com. We can have a complimentary chat to align with where you are. Like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Click on the notification bell so new videos come to your peripheral vision. And remember, there's no one like you. Peace.